Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital.
Now before I begin, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Imagine you are shopping for your first home, and one of your requirements is not only that the property has a house that will work for you and your family, but also that it comes with at least 100 acres of land on which you can hunt for white-tailed deer. And within a few weeks of starting your search, you find what seems to be the perfect deal on 140 acres in upstate New York. This was the situation that one hunting enthusiast found himself in. But was he really getting a deal? Well, I'll let you know at the end of this video. However, suffice it to say, buying hunting land is often not quite this easy. So if you're currently in the market, here are 5 things you should know. Number 1, determine your budget early. The primary reason being that, as with any real estate purchase, it can be easy to be seduced into buying a property that is not quite within your reach simply because you fall in love with it. Since most folks are buying hunting land purely for recreational purposes, you don't want to strain your finances in order to acquire it. In addition, when you are buying hunting land that doesn't have a home on it, so if it's purely for recreational purposes, you may find that it is hard to get financing for the purchase, because in general it can be hard to find financing for vacant land purchases. Thus, you should go into your search assuming that you will need to pay cash for the property or make a very large down payment. Another major item you'll need to determine before beginning your search is whether you want to build on the property. Now, by build, I don't mean putting up a hunting blind, but rather whether you want to build a cabin or home or other major structure on the property. And this is because many prime hunting properties are not actually buildable for a variety of reasons. They may be zoned for recreational uses only, and thus you can't build on them due to the zoning designation, but also hunting properties are often very rural, which means they likely won't have access to utilities. They may not even have great physical access, and the natural characteristics of the lot that may make a property a prime hunting location could also make it very difficult to build on the property. So if you know you want to build, you're going to have to find a property that allows dual uses without compromising one or the other. Number 3, you'll also want to get to know the area where you're looking at land before you begin your search in earnest. As a seasoned hunter yourself, you have probably already begun looking at hunting regulations in the general vicinity of where you're looking to buy land, but these can play a huge factor. For example, some states may have a minimum lot size requirement. Some states may require that you own a certain number of acres before you are allowed to hunt on your own property. So you'll want to research not just the regular hunting requirements of the area in question, as well as whether there are restrictions on hunting on your own property. Again, you'll also want to look into zoning, because regardless of whether you want to build or not, many zoning ordinances will have restrictions on where hunting can occur. So as I mentioned before, there are often restrictions on hunting on private property. So just because you own a parcel doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want with it. So you want to make sure that the zoning designation for the parcel in question allows you to hunt. You'll also want to look into what kinds of local diseases are prevalent in the area and whether this is affecting the local wildlife. In a similar vein, what predators are present and how is this affecting the game populations? And then perhaps of greatest importance, who are the neighbors and the largest landowners? How well do other property owners manage their properties? And how does this affect the availability of game species? In the same vein, you'll want to do as much research on the adjacent properties as on the property that you're looking at. So the condition and habitat quality of the properties adjacent to yours are going to be just as important as the condition of your property. So the first question is whether you are adjacent to publicly held or privately held land. Many land purchasers specifically try to purchase properties that are next to public land. After all, lots of public land is open to hunting, and if you are adjacent to such land, you have essentially dramatically expanded your hunting acreage at very little additional cost. But of course, not all public land is open to hunting or is open to hunting in all areas, so if you are specifically looking for land adjacent to public land, you'll need to check whether you can hunt in the area next to your property. If the properties adjacent to yours are all privately held, again, you want to try and scope out those properties with the same kind of care that you're looking at the property that you're interested in to see how well those properties are managed, and if those properties will support the kind of wildlife you're interested in hunting. And then, of course, you need to scrutinize the property that you would like to purchase to ensure that it has all of the necessary characteristics. Now, at this point, it is often helpful to consult with a real estate agent who specializes in hunting land, but it's a good idea to put together a list of the required characteristics ahead of time. Of course, the biggest question you need to ask yourself is, how much land do you need? And this depends on the kind of game you're looking to hunt. Deer hunting requires substantial acreage, whereas smaller game like turkeys will require far less. But regardless of the size, a property will need the basic natural infrastructure to support the wildlife population, including a water source and food, such as nut and fruit trees or bushes, as well as a variety of leafy greens, and plenty of areas that will serve as shelter. And again, this is where it's helpful to consult with someone who is knowledgeable in hunting properties so they can help you determine the quality of the landscape on a particular parcel of land. And then finally, you also want to scout out how accessible the property is in general. After all, you need to be able to get around in order to take advantage of the hunting opportunities. Perhaps even more importantly, you need to be able to not only get around, but get around without scaring off the animals. Thus, the access pathways need to line up with the wind patterns to ensure that you are not alerting wildlife to your presence. After all, huntable acres are not the same as total acres. Let's return to our opening story about the supposedly perfect parcel of land in upstate New York. Well, as it turns out, once the reporter took a closer look at the landscape, he immediately found that the huntable acres was about half of the total acreage, since half of the property had been used as pasture land and was essentially devoid of any of the natural resources that white-tailed deer would need in order to thrive. This size was further reduced by half again once he overlaid prevailing wind patterns against access pathways and realized that he would only be able to access about half of the property without alerting deer to his presence. Therefore, at the end of the day, the deal did not end up looking so great and he had to turn elsewhere. So this is why it can be helpful to work with an expert so that when you do buy land, you make sure that the full acreage you're purchasing is useful for your purposes. Do you have any stories about buying hunting land? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down properties at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.